Hello, my name is Yumashish, and I'm presenting on the topic injury prevention of ACL in elite soccer players through exercise intervention. So, what ACL injuries and how is this related to my scope of learning of exercise science? As you all know, as an exercise scientist, the scope of learning is very vast. So, we come across people from general population to elite athletes, and injuries can occur in various forms, which can be life changing for a lot of individuals. So, as an exercise scientist, I'm able to help individuals to limit certain injuries to a certain extent. And as a professional soccer player myself, the sporting industry of soccer really interests me, and I can see myself working as an exercise scientist in the coming future for a soccer club. So, learning about ACL injuries and prevention would be very beneficial for me as data has shown that AFL players from 1999 to 2013, which was around 16 years of study period, showed that ACL injuries has a rate of return to play was only around 77%, which is like 121 out of 158 players who had ACL injuries. So imagine a club who pays a lot of money for the player. It would be a big loss for them performance wise, financially. So that's when exercise scientists they step in and they help prevent the injuries. So before we get into anything, understanding what an ACL is very important. So ACL is one of the two knee stabilizers, which is made up of band of dense connective tissue within the knee, which connects the femur to the tibia. As you can see in the figure, there's there's two white stuff that's hanging between the femur and the tibia. So the first one's ACL, which is anterior, and PCL, which is posterior, which stabilizes the knee from two different directions. So a ligament, ACL ligament, is primarily composed of type 1 collagen fibers, which is around 90%, and some type 3 collagen fibers, around 10%. So, if we're talking about the function of an ACL, the main role of ACL is to stop the frontward movement of the shin bone in relation to the thigh bone and backward movement of the thigh bone on the shin, as I mentioned before. Um, it also limits overextension and twisting of the knee joint. So now that we know about the function of the ACL, we can go to the next slide. So we can see how does an ACL injury occur in soccer. So as you can see in the figure, the ligament that we saw before here, the ACL, there's a complete tear of the ACL. So what does that mean? So in football, ACL injuries mostly occur during cutting actions with visual observation analysis, which conforms the mechanism of knee valgus, abducted hip, flat and externally rotated foot, and ipsilateral trunk tilt and collateral rotation. These aberrant movements have been shown to increase the multiplanar knee joint loads and hence increase the ACL load. So there are certain factors that causes an ACL injury, which I just mentioned here, and also there are neuromuscular factors which can also cause an ACL injury. So in soccer, there are common circumstances that causes an ACL damage. So during a match, the player quickly changes direction to escape an opponent from by planting one foot on the side. So the knee experiences both valgus inward and rotational twisting, which stresses which can cause an ACL rupture or strain. And another situation where a player is sprinting, a player may suddenly slow down to avoid an opponent or to take a shot. So the quadriceps contract as the body slows down, pushing the tibia forward and straining the ACL. Therefore, efforts aimed at reducing the rate of ACL injury in football appear to require further development, being non contact or indirect contact injuries the specific focus as they correspond to the 88% of ACL injuries. So going to the next slide, ACL injuries in professional soccer players. So this is pretty much the stat that shows how many soccer players are usually have ACL tears during matches, which can be either contact wise or non contact wise. So here you can see in professional football, only 60% players who ruptured the ACL completed at highest level for 5 years later. So ACL injuries can be really, it can be a big loss for players and the clubs as well, because the data have shown that only 60% players they competed more than 5 years in a high division of soccer league. So ACL injuries in football causes on average an injury burden of almost 30 days per 1,000 hours of exposure. Also, on average, English Premier League teams can lose roughly £45 million per season due to a high number of injury causing a decrease in performance. And high number of injuries can include ACOs. So, more specifically, a decrease in injury rate has been associated with better performance in professional football, such as achieving a higher league position, winning more games, scoring more goals, having a greater goal difference, and earning more total points. And injuries are more inclined to have a detrimental effect on the team performance. So now that we know why ACL injuries are can be so dangerous for both players and teams, we can see certain risk factors. So the risk factors can be either intrinsic or extrinsic. So yeah, we can start with extrinsic factors such as shoe surface interference, the traction between ground and shoes. So let's say while a player is running, the traction between the shoe and the ground, the ground reaction force can cause ACO. And the other is like playing field condition where the ground is not in a top notch condition and has a lot of bumps. That's when the player can misstep and then have an ACO injury. Also, stamina, which is really neglected, plays a big role because if a player is tired, their performance is decreased, and then the physical performance, like running and stuff. So imagine if a player is running when he's really tired, they can have a misstep, and then they can rupture the ACL. So the other intrinsic risk factors that can be seen here, which can be anatomical, which can be hormonal, which can be neuromuscular and genetic wise, these are usually non-modifiable, but that can be made better with exercise. So exercise program for rehab of ACL. So ACL injuries, they don't really have a high incidence rate with an average of 0.43 to almost like zero point 0.6 injuries per team per season. So that's not a lot. That's below one. So as a result of low number of ACL injuries suffered per season, some potentially effective intervention could not be able to reach significance when rate is used to evaluate the efficiency. So as an alternative, in the purpose of reducing ACL injuries, intervention programs could be also developed with the aim of modifying risk factors. So there's a exercise plan here which consists of 4 phases that goes through our 6 weeks. So this plan focuses on strengthening the leg muscles that support the knee, ensuring athletes develop muscle strength needed for jumping movements. So by starting with strength training, we aim to decrease the likelihood of knee pain often associated with exercises. The program then progresses to incorporate a range of exercise mimicking movements in sports. Through enhancing strength, coordination, and power, our program aims to enhance your team performance while reducing the risk of ACL injuries. So after exercise, after prevention, feedback and testing for injury is really important. So let's say regular testing and feedback after exercise or match is very important for risk management, and restricting certain movement habits can build a strong foundation for risk management. So there are few exercise testing that you can do, which can be very simple but really effective. So a 6 meter time hop or a single leg hop that can be done, let's say once a week or twice a week throughout the season, and just to make sure the players are not facing any discomfort while doing these testings. Yeah, so the application in sports science industry. So why is this learning important for me? So as an exercise scientist working with a soccer team, I would be able to establish a proper ACL prevention program at the beginning of the season and continue throughout the season to get optimal outcomes. So also give extra consideration to female athletes who have 2 to 8 times greater likelihood of ACL tears because of their anatomical and biomechanical characteristics. Highlight proper technique while performing risky movements such as slowing down, landing, and changing directions. And highlight the importance of keeping your knee out during squats to engage your hip adductors and external rotators. So, being an exercise scientist and being able to identify the problem and prevent it as an exercise scientist would be a great skill to have for my internship and for my future.